Can you hear me?
There we go. We can hear you, Jason. Hi, everybody. It is. Wait. I have a smart ass banner. Oh, why didn't it? Why didn't it update? Hi, it's Burns and Holla. My name is Zach Burns, joined always by my co-host Terry Holloman, the Holla. There we go. I fixed it. Now I'm going to put the banner up and. Also joining us, my former co-host. It's so weird, Jason. I can never remember how long exactly we did the show for together.
It was a year.
It was like a year. Okay. Jason Rantz is here. Seattle's wannabe Ben Shapiro, as was pointed out on Twitter today.
Just acknowledge for a moment, like the mix of anti-Semitism and all of that in the two tweet responses. To which you had posted, you only got two responses.
Yeah, I know, and they were both hateful towards you.
Yes, one because I'm Richard Spencer, or two because I'm a Jew. I'm a wannabe Ben Shapiro.
You are, but you should be. He's like kind of successful. You know, he's doing all right for himself. I don't think it's necessarily because you're both Jews
that you want to. They could go Hannity, Glenn Beck. They only chose the Jew. Every once in a while, I'll get the little Tucker Carlson one, which again, that one does. Okay, I'll have a wildly successful, most watched cable news program on Fox News in the history of cable news. I'm on board. I'm all in.
Yeah. Terry, meet Jason. Jason, meet Terry. Not really.
We've known each other for a long time.
A very long time. I know Terry longer than you have.
You have.
Without a doubt, you have. Yeah. But
I've worked with Jason, been on the show. We've done television together.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure you did New Day together several times.
Yeah, we worked together.
Only one of us was invited back after the Brett Kavanaugh hearing.
Who?
Wasn't
referring to me?
Yeah.
What happened, Zach?
They stopped.
Yeah, right.
They stopped inviting me because I was too conservative.
You were too Shapiro-esque.
But Terry, you've done midday TV enough. Did Jason scream to you as someone who would be appealing to that audience?
Probably not on that channel with that demographic. Probably not. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I mean, who would think that, the ex-football playing ruffian African American would fit that time slot?
That's a good point. Margaret Larson, if I were to draw a host for that show, that would be what the sketch would look like. Like, she just seems so, visually appropriate for it. Whereas Jason, your whole career is just like spreading negativity. You can't do that and then be like, coming up next, 30 new ways to make ramen.
I guest hosted New Day once.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yep, and I did great.
Yeah, how about this?
On TV.
Let's stay on talk show hosts, because I can't figure out this story at all. Ellen is apparently kind of mean and might lose everything.
Yes, I have so much to say. She's an awful person. She's an awful person. So she's the kind of person where you sort of have these nightmare bosses where you can't make eye contact with them. You can't wear the wrong cologne or perfume. And there's long been rumors of how badly she treats people who work for her. There's two separate issues. One of just being a rotten human being who's just mean to everybody. And there's been this concern that every day she picks one person to pick on. And it's completely random. You're just on her list for the day to torment.
Isn't that how we understand TV hosts to be? Like they're tyrants. But
she starts off her show with the little dance, which, by the way, she clearly doesn't like to dance. Just stop this nonsense. She tries to put on this really nice, positive person, but she's just an awful person. And then there's the claims of racism, sexism, inappropriate.
That's when you get to the vague part of the story. Because I read today this timeline of apparently her misgivings. Like, she insulted Dakota Johnson, star of 50 Shades of Grey, for not inviting her to a birthday party. She made a joke about James Corden that I still can't find the cruelty in it. And then there's just these, some days she would just do, again, vaguely sort of mean things. And then there's this supposed celebrity pile-on. Here's the two names that I've heard. Leah Thompson, who had to be explained to me who she was, even though she was my first crush, from Back to the Future.
Back to the Future.
Like Marty McFly's mom, and then Carolyn in the City, and then Brad Garrett from Everybody Loves Raymond, not the Raymond part, Raymond's brother. So this is the celebrity pile-on that we're now seeing. That's actually not really happening.
That part's ridiculous, but there are definitely
all the story is ridiculous to me.
Well, the people who again, this has been going on for a very long time. This is not a new situation. There was, I want to say like maybe 2 months, 3-ish months ago, there was a trend on Twitter all day of just Ellen horror stories from former employees.
I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to give you guys, I'm going to throw my 2 cents in, and please help me out, because here's the deal. I purposely have been ignoring the story. I've avoided the story, and it's for a couple of reasons. And the main one is this. So I've never really sat down and watched an entire Ellen show. I'll be honest.
Never once. No.
Yeah, I've never seen
not one time. But from the snippets and everything I've seen of Ellen over the years, I've always had this impression in my mind, like, Ellen is a great person. Like, she gives away hundreds of thousands of dollars. She changes little kids' lives that are sick. She makes a wish. She's so engaging and entertaining. Man, she's like an angel on earth walking amongst us. A lesbian angel. And, you got to respect that, right? And so when I see the story, I like, not Ellen. Like, no, that's impossible. That's impossible.
So you're known for being the greatest person. You're never the greatest person. It's always fake. The ones who are the nice people are the ones.
You're such a cynic.
But Gandhi was a dick. Mother Teresa apparently wasn't nice all the time. If she had just been if she had developed a different persona, I don't think anybody would care whatsoever. Because I've heard stories from people who worked with her in a stand-up capacity that one, she's a joke thief. Take that for what you will. But that she's really mean and dismissive of people. But I'm still like, so what? That's when you're a star, you get that right. Like, I wouldn't if I met Mick Jagger. I wouldn't expect him to be like, oh, let me just spend time listening to your dumb ideas.
You expect him to be similar to what his brand is. And that's just, kudos to anyone who creates a brand that is sellable, successful, and a complete sham, right? But
it's true.
In a lot of ways, kudos for her for being able to get away with that. I can't remember if we talked about it, Zach, during one of my after shows, but there's a guy in LA radio named Brian Whitman. He was at some point, he was going through, I think it was an alcoholism problem. And Sean Hannity called him and said, I've already paid for the full month. You're going to rehab. And Sean Hannity doesn't have this persona publicly of being like the super nice guy who just treats people well. You kind of just assume he's very similar to his radio. But I've heard so many stories specifically about him on how he's just like the nicest person behind the scenes to people. So it's like it's kind of like the opposite of what's her name, of Ellen.
Yes, that's true. And I've heard I have a lot of friends that actually work at Fox News and Fox News Radio. And they say some people there are just like Bill O'Reilly was just a garbage person through.
You can tell, but that was his brand on and off.
That kind of was. That's true. But he did try to make himself an arbiter of morality as well. Sean Hannity says a lot of stupid stuff, and he could not be more in the bag at the Church of Trump than he is. Like, I think he attends 6 or 7 services. But in terms of, I've had
he's the deacon.
Yes. But I remember when I got fired in New York, one broadcaster defended our show, and it was Sean Hannity. And I worked on an affiliate of his, and he would visit, make it a market visit every time, every year or so. And he was nothing but a kind person off the air. He says a lot of stupid crap on the air, but if you have this audience expectation, and he certainly delivers for it. I'm not going to judge him for that. If I judged him for that, then how could Jason and I possibly be friends? But off the air, he is truly like a actually good and decent person. Whereas the weird thing is, Terry, is that a lot of the people I watch, I like the stuff that they say on the air, but think that they're absolute trash off the air. Jason and I were talking about this past Wednesday. We both hate Chris Cuomo with like this vicious passion as a person, not necessarily even as much as a broadcaster. I just can't take his off-air persona.
So tough. Oh, I'm so tough. You go do some
Get after it.
Your butt. Oh yeah.
That's who he is, right? He hits the gym. He's proud of his muscles. I'd be proud of my muscles too if I was, Chris Cuomo. I might do my show topless.
He's verbally topless during that show.
He's just not smart either, but he talks down to an audience like they're kindergartners. And he's also just, some of the stories he's just factually incorrect on. He did a story, I think it was Thursday or Friday. He was comparing GDP of this country to Germany. And most people have no idea what GDP means, and you hear numbers, they don't know what it means. But
that's why you should talk down to them.
His entire monologue was based on incorrect data. He was saying GDP for Germany was down less than, it's the opposite. His entire thing was based on a false number.
Is that his fault, or is that somebody in research? Is that something? Somebody had to feed him those numbers.
I agree. I agree with that to a point.
To a point, that's
if he had 4 hours to fill, I would be more forgiving of that. But I do love the irony that Jason's worried about a misrepresented statistic.
No, it's just a recent example of him just not knowing what he's talking about.
Right, okay, based on numbers that have proved to be actually factually inaccurate. I mean, that's a difficult place for you to.
Oh yeah, your 2-minute monologue, you couldn't spend any extra time getting just like the basic premise correct.
No. Because all he wants to do is he's just waiting for the 58-minute mark of his show so he can have his brother on for 2 minutes. I mean, that's always the highlight.
His brother, that part.
Yeah. So Ellen, is she coming back, or is this because it's been announced that I didn't want to get wrapped up in this story, but the reason that ended up getting wrapped up, it's just that you see a name trending. So Ellen's trending, and so you read a story and you're like, okay, that can't be the full story. It can't just be that she took a picture with George W. Bush. That can't be the reason that she loses her job. But then I couldn't find the actual, she slapped someone in the face, she threw water at somebody, she, flipped her desk over. It just seemed like, oh, she was aloof sometimes. So
no, I've done an enormous amount of research into this. She's just and I've known this story for a while.
Yeah,
this has been talked about for a while, but it's only come to
light forever. Yeah.
There's an investigation by Warner Media into the allegations because it got up to the level of like producers engaged in sexual harassment and misogyny and racism, etc.
So here's the question I want to ask you guys. Okay, so it's one thing to be a terrible person, people think you're an asshole or whatever it might be, right? It's a whole different thing to be wrapped up in the, sexual harassment, the entire ball of wax that I've seen, of course, the headlines. Where does she fall? She hasn't ever been actually accused of actually her physically harassing someone. How does the ball stop with her? I mean, is she the person, because she's the star? Is she in control of everything? Is it just the business of Ellen that's in control?
It's her connection to the producers, right? I mean, this is a show that she controls. This is not a show that she shows up and they give her a script and this is her baby essentially, and she's an integral.
Even if it's not, it still falls in her lap.
Yeah, she's an integral part of the whole system. And so if it's happening and you're part of it, and again, she's personally accused of a toxic work environment, just not tied to, a specific case of like sexual harassment or something. Mm-hmm. She's just mean. And when you created a system that, people are scared to make eye contact with you and they feel terrorized on set, and you're the big reason why that happens, then it's on the producers to address it. And if you're choosing not to because you're the the star of the show, then it becomes as big as it is now. Now, to be fair, no matter what ended up happening here, her ratings have been in the toilet for, I want to say 2 years, maybe 3 years now. And so there were rumors that this was going to be the end of her show anyway. This might hasten it.
I don't know why people, what are people watching instead? I get primetime ratings. I've never gotten
in that world though, in that space. Is Ellen, do people care about Ellen the same way? Like, she doesn't have the same brand that she did 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
I don't know that to be true. It might be true, because what I do know is that Oprah, we talk about as, the biggest talk show host / brand in that, in that sort of genre of all time. But she always got her clock cleaned by Judge Judy. Like, Judge Judy is actually, and Judge Judy, if we found out stuff like this about her, we'd be like, yeah, that sort of makes sense.
Well, that's her kind of personality.
Yeah.
He's brusque.
Judge Judy wrote a memoir, which is weird, called "Don't Pee on My Leg and Tell Me It's Raining," which is a phrase I've just never understood. I don't.
Why did you ever understood that?
So that was the predate of Gaslight.
I mean, yeah, that's a phrase I'm very familiar with. Growing up playing football and having to shower with other men in the shower, we had to pee on each other's legs once or twice. So
I don't understand. Are we speaking literally now? Again, these are two worlds I'm not familiar with.
No, but I'm trying to be funny.
I know.
No, I mean, I get this. I've grown up knowing that saying, man. Don't tell me something is when it's not that.
Why not just say that? Why is there pee involved? That's what
it's fun.
Yeah,
I think so.
It's cute.
I would feel crazy saying that if I thought someone was gaslighting me, just to say, "Oh, don't pee on me and tell me it's raining." It would be clearly an easy thing to disprove, because I would just see the pee on my leg and see that it's not coming from the sky.
Wouldn't say that in 2020. There's a lot of things that we see today,
right,
that we would probably think was ridiculous a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
That, it's like pee.
Probably came out.
That's piss.
So let's talk about other things in 2020. Let's talk about Seattle for a while. I'm so divided on, and Jay, we touched on this last week, Terry, and then Jason and I touched on some Wednesday. It's really annoying when I get people. When I get people from other cities being like, "Are you safe?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm fine. I'm fine here." But then for people to note that there's a misrepresentation of how Seattle's being covered in national media, to justify that being that, well, everything is okay here, isn't really a good thing either. And Terry, you and I last Monday talked to Jake Snyder from Minus the Bear, and just kind of an outspoken advocate.
By the way,
Minus the Bear is a good band. I know you don't like Jake, but Minus the Bear is a good band.
I've never heard a song from Minus the Bear.
They're good.
I've never heard any of their music. I just know Jake because he used to be nice to me on Twitter, and then he started to troll me, and then I just blocked him because he was getting into that. You're making me like legitimately uncomfortable territory. I'm just going to block it and end it.
Right. Well, he hasn't gotten to that point with me, and I still appreciate his band. But and then we had Chase on, who the Stranger offices used to be located essentially right in the middle of CHOP / Chaz. So he had a firsthand account of a lot of stuff that happened there, and then also witnessed a lot of what happened later. And things had simmered down, and then there was something not even in Seattle. There was a group of protesters. It's the Every Evening March, and they decided that they were going to visit Seattle Police Department Chief Carmen Best in Snohomish, and were met by some very well-armed residents of Snohomish. And it was one of those situations, and I'm kind of glad it happened outside the city, because it's like I don't want to get another set of texts from my aunt in Alberta. But no one really came off well in that situation. I thought everybody looked pretty stupid. It was, I don't know if having the idea of visiting these people at their homes is a good plan. I don't think that
it's literally trying to rule by the mob.
But it's not.
But it totally is.
A group of people isn't necessarily a mob. It's not. And then
people who are threatening, who are bullying, who are trying to intimidate, that's literally the definition of a mob.
But they had done it with other people and there had been no incidents. And then they ran it.
But that's not true. So when you mean other, you mean violence?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you show up to someone's house and
they never made it to the house.
I'm talking in all of the cases, when you show up to an individual's home who is a lawmaker, and you threaten their sense of safety by threatening to hurt them if they don't vote a certain way, that is a threat, that is a mob, that is dangerous, and it shouldn't be just poo-pooed and say, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal. They didn't actually hurt anybody. I'm sorry, but it should be illegal when you're threatening someone. It is, in fact, illegal.
Is it? Because a lot of people did that back in the early days of the pandemic, and I didn't really hear you get all that upset. Right. People showing up with guns at federal buildings all across Michigan and in Wisconsin, similar things. And here's why I don't like the idea of visiting people in their houses, because if we're going to talk about mob rules, there are some mob/mafia rules, like you leave the family out of it. But for them to be met with like this mini militia was just looked ridiculous too.
Here's the challenge with that. Here's the challenge I have with that. So first and foremost, I'm going on the record right now and saying it was a terrible idea for them to come to march or protest or do whatever they were planning to do in front of Carmen's Best residence. It's a bad idea. I mean, all the way around. Mm-hmm. Second of all, I live in Snohomish. I know how they get down here. I saw a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago, where, after the riots first started in Seattle, and there was the rumor that Antifa was coming to Snohomish. And I went downtown Snohomish, and I saw the residents show up with the AR-15s and the bulletproof vests and the tactical weapons and you name it. They lined the streets of Snohomish to protect Snohomish. And so you should know where you're going if you're planning on, having these protests and you're going to show up to the police chief's residence.
You show up to
understand where you're going.
You shouldn't show up to a private residence with the intent of threatening or bullying someone into taking a political position. There's a difference between showing up to a public building, a police station, police precinct on West, or going down to the Capitol. There's a clear difference there. That is acceptable, and that's always been an acceptable form of protest, showing up there. But to go to a private person's home,
where they never made it to,
doxing goes way too far.
But is it also good for an armed group of U.S. citizens to chase off an unarmed group of U.S. citizens on public lands? Because at that point, they were only on a public road. Is that cool in the gang?
No,
I don't think it is.
No. So that's what I'm saying. Neither. Like we're in the second act of this increasingly stupid play. Because again, I saw the demographics of the protesters, and that's, Terry, you've heard me say this phrase a bunch of times, just the anarchist white boys.
They're privileged white.
Yeah. And Terry, I don't know how much
actual white privilege, by the way. The idea that you can pretend to stand for something that you really don't give a damn about. These are people who want social currency so they can say on Twitter that they're fighting the real fight. And I'm going to be friends with a black guy. That's the only reason they're doing it. And they show up and they break the law, and there's almost never any legal consequence. That's called white privilege.
Well, it was called white privilege back in February and March too, when people were showing up heavily weaponized.
Except you get to carry a weapon in Washington State or in Michigan. There's a difference. So,
but a lot of them were acting as aggressively towards police officers as the protests are now, and weren't being castigated for it whatsoever. It was like, oh, they're expressing their freedoms.
But I guess I disagree with that.
If you stomp up towards a police officer with a fully loaded weapon, that is an act of aggression. Whether you strike them with it, whether you shoot them with it, whatever it is.
But again, so here's the main difference, because when you live in a state that has open carry, as is the case in Michigan and here in Washington and Texas, other states, there's a difference between having a weapon versus pointing the weapon. Pointing the weapon is the threat and should be taken incredibly seriously, incredibly quickly. Having it holstered or behind you, like you're allowed to do that. Do I like the idea of yelling invective at cops regardless of who's doing it? No. And I called it out at the time on my show. But I mean, the difference was that was a weekend of unrest or a Saturday into Sunday in Michigan, and it kind of ended there, right? It wasn't a daily thing.
It didn't last as long as this, but it wasn't sparked by a single incident.
Yeah, but it was a weekend versus.
It was longer than a weekend, but it wasn't. You're right. I will concede to the point we're not on day 64.
Yeah.
Here's a question I want to ask both of you now. Again, it's not even playing devil's advocate. It's just being, just a straight up question. We saw what happened in Michigan, as you said, with the armed militia, able to stand on government grounds with their automatic weapons. What would happen in a situation if it would have been like 50 black dudes with guns marching, yelling in police officers' faces, shouting them down?
The same, Carrie.
What?
Exactly. No.
They would have just.
Of course, it would have been much different.
You got like 10 hours left, and then you got to go home.
Well, Jason, do you really think that it would have been the same?
Are you saying the exact same language and everything the same? Yes, it's supposed to be. And I know that there are claims that it would never happen, but unless you point to an instance that is similar in which it doesn't happen, I'm not going to say.
It won't happen because black men were too scared. We know. Okay, but won't come back alive from that situation.
Yeah, but that's just not true. So in the first election for Obama, and I can't remember. Someone wants to Google it real quickly. They can. Black Panthers were
Black Panthers that never were.
The Black Panthers.
We're really going to use this Black Panther mythology.
You're using the argument that African Americans with guns in similar circumstances would immediately get gunned down, right? Okay. Well, in cases where that hasn't actually happened, then what's the comeback to that? Well, they got lucky in this case. There's got to be. I think we should point to specific facts. So in this case, you had in Michigan a bunch of white people doing it, and I don't think there were any arrests, or if there were, maybe one or two, right? So there's that. Then go to here in Seattle, where they were throwing stuff at cops, no arrests. They were able to completely take over a 6-block radius of Capitol Hill with little resistance. In fact, it was
not any black people.
Huh?
But it wasn't. Yeah, this wasn't really a black leg.
No, I know, but I'm saying even ideologically speaking, they're being treated exactly the same. And I do think the only violence that we've seen here in Seattle, ironically, was at Shop against 2 black teenagers committed presumably by the white Antifa John Gun Club, whatever the hell that thing is called, the security.
Yeah.
Although the first one I think might have been gang related based on some of the, but I don't know.
They were unfortunate. I don't think the details have been fully revealed on what happened. But that's what led to the end of Chop. Obviously, there was violence that became. There was violence
before that of like Raz Simone handing out guns, semi-automatic weapons to people in the crowd, and police didn't get involved at all.
I did not see him hand out semis. Yeah, but Raz was already the big. If you don't know Raz Simone, is the Chop movement is intentionally leaderless, but he got interviewed as the pseudo leader or whatever, and
he stepped up. I mean, there are a lot of different people who are trying to step up because look, when you've got a movement like that, at some point you realize you do kind of need someone who's in charge to help.
Well, if you want it to be effective, yes, you do need somebody that you can rely on. There would have, point to any meaningful movement ever in history ever, and you could be like, oh, I know 2 people that were involved with that movement because there was a leader. But I don't want to get into any. I know stuff about Raz. He's Raz. Okay.
Airbnb.
Yeah. But Terry does have a point that if that same situation went down in Michigan, it would likely have gone very differently, because at that point you look at this group of 50 black men with guns as a threat, not as a group of patriots who are fighting for whatever rights they thought they're for Applebee's to stay open. One actually literally said like, I'm into Arby's, and which I thought this might be 2020's best quote, because I miss Arby's too, not to the degree that he does.
Why? Of all places?
I like it. I only miss it because it moved out of Seattle. It has nothing to do with the pandemic. But there was only one location in Soto, and it's gone. But I like Arby's. I think it's delicious, actually. Horsey sauce, yes.
Venture out here to Snohomish and try it out.
I've had Arby's all across the country.
I'm looking at video right now on YouTube. If you search heavily armed black militia Georgia.
Yeah, they had one in Georgia, but guess what's in Georgia? Black people.
Well, you do know that
they got black city council. They got black police officers. It's a chocolate city.
It's a blacker city.
There's a lot of parts in Michigan. The Michigan is not the whitest white place in the world.
No,
they were.
Say that again.
Where they were at that particular moment, I think that was a pretty white part. There are some parts of Michigan.
There were a lot of white people who were walking there. That is true. But I mean, look, again, the point is not that your point didn't sound like you were simply saying they would show up and not seek resistance because the population isn't black. Your point was because cops would react.
I think so. I mean,
just America views a black man with a gun different than they view a white man with a gun. That's just that's absolute truth. Is that a black man with a gun is a threat, and a white man with a gun is someone defending their property.
But part of that is the cultural side on the militia part, right? Because usually when you're seeing a militia person or someone who's hardcore about guns and protecting their rights, they tend to be white. So I think that in that instance, that just happens to be.
I just think that what gun ownership is perceived as is different between the two communities.
And the interesting part about that, as well as you talk about some of these militias and some of the things that they stand for, like some of their mission statements, is to overthrow the government.
Well, I don't think you have a militia if you don't want. Like, I can't imagine.
There's right?
There's two.
No, we want lower property taxes militia.
That would be a super popular one. There are definitely two groups within the militia standing, right? So there was one part of that group are the crazy people who literally want to overthrow the government. The other ones are the people who say, you know what, and you could say there's a ridiculous position to take, fine, but we're here to protect ourselves if the government were ever to overstep its bounds.
Right. And then, there's this.
Not an overthrow, more
that sounds, but yeah.
And so again, at the end of the day, if we compare and contrast the two, let's take a group over here that has guns that show up and say we're protesting for equal rights, and we're going to have our guns to say we're here because we want to protect our Second Amendment rights as well. And then another group over here that says we want to overthrow you. But I'm more afraid of this group over here that says they want equal rights. Let's hit them on the head with a billy club and take them to jail.
That is true. Because basically an overthrow of the government means that you're going to, at some point, attack federal. You're going to attack the military that we're
but I do think that group that you're talking about is much smaller than the other group, and the militia people in general represents a very small percentage.
Right.
Yeah, of course they do.
I get that.
The crazy ones that you're referring to, they come in case like the Bundy. Oregon.
But that's another great example where they actually had their guns pointed at federal agents. Like they did. They overtook a federal building a couple of years later.
No, I agree with that. I do think, though, context in that regard is different, because what do you immediately point to when we're talking about those kinds of groups and government overreaction in the case where they were all white?
You think that they overreacted because they were all white? Or
no. What was the original...
The original thing is that they weren't allowed to use federal lands for free anymore.
Go back before that. I'm saying, what was the original Ruby
Ridge?
Yeah, and that was. I mean, I think that was the context in which they were reacting, because what they didn't want to have happen was another scenario like that. So again, there was.
It's true. That wasn't very good. Ruby Ridge was not very good.
That was a horrible thing, and that wasn't they all? I think they were all white. And so I think
as was
I think they were white supremacists.
Yeah, but they were. What is? They were all white, and they went in guns blazing, and everyone died. It was a total disaster. I mean, and so I think
if I remember the story correctly, Jason, I think somebody screwed up. Like one of the snipers screwed up and shot his wife, and then it all went downhill from there.
That's exactly what happened. That's right, Terry. Because there was recently a documentary series on it. I mean, that stuff is fascinating. Then there was a fictionalized but apparently pretty accurate thing on David Koresh, and you know, it's the perception that I had of that story initially, where David Koresh was crazy, but his name became so synonymous with crazy that you thought like, oh well, you know, besides Manson, Koresh is like this other example of a cult leader that ended up driving his people to all be killed. But that story is it's a little more complicated than I initially thought.
We need a good. He was a good cult leader story. We need
and there most of them must be.
Because especially in the world of like the peaceniks and everything, they were starting cultish groups.
And actually, you know what?
Like murder.
Every cult leader is good if you stop watching halfway through the movie, because it's like everybody is coming together. Yeah,
and then a big communal thing with growing vegetables,
fresh radishes.
Totally great. All ended in bloodshed. There has to be one positive story.
But then all of a sudden, at like the 75-minute mark, someone shows up with a gun, and you're like, "Oh, damn it! It was going so well, it's going to fall apart again." But you would think there has to be at least 24 cults out there that have existed.
You know what's crazy? The thing is probably the things that are, I'm going to be controversial, is like a lot of these things probably have started as cults and turned into like a very mainstream religion. Like everything that's probably a mainstream religion at one point started off people believing that it was cultish. Like who would think that some of the things that you do as a Catholic is not like normal? Like you come through with a smoking chalice thing. Like people were probably like that's kind of weird.
But I think it was easier to introduce somewhat unusual ideas back when your church was being founded in the 1500s, when we still thought God was responsible for thunderstorms and stuff, and all the crazy unscientific. Yeah. It would be a little bit. I would love for someone to live up to the challenge. Like, okay, start a new accredited religion, because it's even it's astonishing that in the 50s L. Ron Hubbard was able to create Scientology, but now in 2020, I feel like most cults probably real. It would almost be like starting a new airline. Like nobody can build that sort of infrastructure anymore.
Listen, have you seen TikTok? Man, there's some people on TikTok that are like TikTok famous, man. Our kids are
influencers
facing them.
Yeah, but social media influencers they're still a diamond.
That could be the new cult, is what I'm saying, Jason. We don't know.
Well, TikTok's getting banned, so there.
Yeah, I wanted to get into that. This seems like something that shouldn't matter at this point, but maybe TikTok. If you don't know what it is, you probably shouldn't. You're probably too old for it. I feel like I'm too old.
I created a Venn diagram today of TikTok users. On the one hand, the one circle, stupid people. The other circle, bored. This is TikTok users.
That's social media users, really, though. I mean, that's everything.
But it's especially even at least on Twitter, you're using it to get news and stuff.
Supposedly. But TikTok is owned by a Chinese corporation. And it's without a doubt harvesting data, because social media companies don't exist.
Harvesting data for communist China.
Right. Which was if you remember remember when everyone was using that app? It was just like 6 months ago.
Face recognition.
Yeah, it was the same thing. That's owned by a Chinese.
Make your face old.
Yeah, why would anyone want to see that? I never really got that. I don't want to see what I look like when I get old. Tell I'm old. I don't want to see that until the last minute. I look good.
I'm gonna ask you guys this real quick. So the TikTok thing, it's China, communist China stealing our info. I'm not a big TikTok user. I think I signed up for an account one time just to mess with my kids. But what kind of information is flowing through there other than, because every time I look at it, it's just like somebody doing some.
No, so it's a little bit different. They can find out information, including your location and your age demographics. And specifically in China, they've used it to track down people who then have been sent to death camps and or forced sterilization camps. So the way that it works,
which is the mission statement for like every Chinese company. we sell chicken breasts, and also we're collecting data to send you to death camp.
So specifically in China, the way that the law works is if the communist regime says to you, Terry, you own this app, you have to give us your data. Not only do you have to immediately turn it over, you can't discuss it. You can't publicly claim that you did that. So it's all kept on the down low. So in the United States, I mean, as we're having these conversations about, a potential of pushing fake news to interfere with an election, when you have access to all of that data, specifically what are the types of content you like, what moves you, it's very easy for the Chinese government then to interfere. We should have this kind of similar concerns with any companies that have similar apps, and we do, like WeChat and stuff like that, where they have access to everything that you're sending.
But we just deserve our fate when it comes to this. And there's a deal right now when it comes to
nationally, nationally, 100%.
We do.
100%. We're all saying yes to StreamYard. I have no clue what information they're taking from us.
No idea at all.
Facebook, no idea. But the difference is, number one, generally, though not exclusively, here it's used for targeting ads, and I actually kind of like the targeted ads. But number two, it's going to the U.S. government in a worst case scenario if there's a legitimate hack. But we know about it. There's a system that's public. I don't want to go into a communist regime or any foreign entity.
Yeah, but we do enough business with China.
I'm not going to China anytime soon, so I'm good. They're going to have to come here and get me.
Coronavirus, Terry, relax.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, if the communist China get a hold of my stuff, they're going to have to come to Snohomish, and you know what happens when you come to Snohomish.
Yeah, now we do. Absolutely. I never got into TikTok, so the story hasn't really been, front page news for me. But
Jane in the comments here, they track your keypad. So let's say you're typing in your password to an email address. If you copy and paste something into your notebook, they're also able to get that, and it gets refreshed every 15 seconds or so.
Wait a minute. So they can take that off of while you're not even on the app?
While you're using the phone or while the app is active.
It's such that it has been forever. And it should be terrifying. Like, the ability for somebody to monitor your keystrokes is really, and obviously,
this was not controversial of a position that Trump took before he took it on Friday. Democrats and Republicans were basically saying the same thing about the national security risks of Chinese businesses like this. And then all of a sudden, Trump said TikTok should be banned, and a bunch of check marks on Twitter. Oh, you've pissed off the young voters. They're not going to vote. And it's been turned into
It's true. It is. It probably has.
Turned into a political movement. Remember, so Trump is simultaneously inviting foreign interference in elections while also cutting out an app that would create foreign interference with an election.
You invite the one you like.
Exactly. He doesn't like
First of all, the stuff with Russia was going both ways too. I mean, they were involved in both trying to. Their intent was to sow discord within the U.S. election system.
And the easiest way to do that would be to promote Trump, knowing that he would sow
way more discord. They didn't promote Trump. They also
promote him to a much further degree, because discord. Are we not in a nation of discord at this moment? And would we be less so with Hillary Clinton? We would be far less so.
The DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign used a literal piece of foreign aid in the Steele dossier to cause problems within the election. That was foreign aid. It was all fake.
We use foreign aid. It's not the problem with that.
Who started that investigation? Who paid for it originally?
Oh, you're saying that the Republican, again, the DNC paid for the Steele dossier. So
it's not the same thing.
Of course, it's the same thing. It was made up, but it was false. It was falsified.
And I don't remember it ever being like fully put out there the same way with the same insidious nature that the Russian interference was. And the Russians have been successful in creating a country now that can't even go and visit Russia. Like we're stuck here. We're fighting each other. We hate each other. We hate. We're only the only thing we're trying to preserve together as a country is TikTok and a weird baseball season.
Only kids and grandparents use TikTok. I've learned.
I don't even know.
The only thing I watch is Sarah Cooper, and I know that that's the reason that Trump doesn't like it is Sarah Cooper's TikTok videos.
I'm going to tell you.
I don't know who that is.
Yes.
Other than the fact that
Sarah Cooper. She's the one who does the lip syncing.
Oh yeah, the lip sync, the girl who lip syncs Donald Trump's speeches. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know who she is.
I'll send you a link. But there's two main reasons why I do not like TikTok right now, other than the fact that Communist China is looking at it. I don't care about that. I do care that my kids spend 12 to 20 hours a day on it. And I'm like, what are you doing right now? And they're just going aimlessly, just looking at other people's life, right? So that's
are you in support of that because they're leaving you alone? Or
no, I'm actually not. Believe it or not, I'm really the kind of dad I like to be involved. I want to be involved, but I go into the room. I'm like, hey, what's up? What's going on? And they're like, nothing. And then I close the doors like I was never even there.
COVID related. Like, so if we didn't have coronavirus right now, would TikTok be as popular?
Not as popular, I don't think, but I think it was getting started before COVID, and I think since COVID hit and now they don't have access to their friends like they used to, this becomes a substitute.
Sports up until recently. I mean, I'm wondering if like the habits start to change as we get baseball, hockey, football coming up, NBA. I wonder if it starts to change, and movies are starting to come out, thankfully, at the end of this movie.
See, and again, so let me just say this then. So the other reasons why I don't like it, other than the fact that it occupies all my kids' time, is, and I wonder if you guys, maybe Jason, you won't feel this way because you have a real radio show, but I'm looking at this thing as someone who's an influencer, a public figure. I'm trying to build my brand continually, and I feel like we're out here trying to put out good stuff. We're trying to put out thought-provoking, controversial, things that make you think, interesting, entertaining things on a daily basis. And then there's like a 18-year-old in a half bikini top that can do this, and she have 27 million views.
So you're jealous,
and I'm a little jealous. I'm a little jealous.
Yeah,
put on a bikini top and let's see what you can do.
I might do that. I have a pair of Daisy Dukes I've been waiting to break out all summer, and I might just do it.
It's worth a try.
It is weird what stuff connects and what doesn't, and a lot of it you can't really point to why. And in a lot of cases, it's just sheer luck that one person saw it who retweeted it, and then it just sort of organically grew.
That's the only way it happens.
Yeah, there are some places you can very, like Kim Kardashian, promote something. All of a sudden, yeah. But it is kind of weird how some of this stuff just, and it's stupid. It's usually stupid stuff.
Stupid stuff. That's what I'm saying. It's stupid stuff. And look, now you have 20 million followers.
Yeah. I mean, I get the whole idea of someone who's attractive in a bikini ends up getting a lot of likes. That makes sense. But in a world where that's no longer a unique asset to have, and it's not like you can't get that exact same content literally anywhere, it is weird.
But you can't get enough of it, apparently. I guess that's the lesson, is that even though 1 out of every 3 websites is literally dedicated to that sort of content, still that's not enough.
It's not
enough. And again, Terry, I suggest
but it's all free now.
Daisies. Bring out the Daisy Dukes.
I might.
But the kids aren't going to get the Daisy Duke reference. That is a problematic reference, actually.
Oh, probably not. Yeah. Oh,
yeah. Goes back to the
Dukes officially. I was wondering this other day, literally, as I was mowing my lawn, I was thinking, are the Dukes canceled? And I'm just being honest. I mean, like, I'm talking about in the council culture. You know what I'm saying?
I'm pretty sure they pulled that from Nickelodeon.
Nick at Night bails on shows so quickly. But I can't imagine there was this massive uproar for Dukes of Hazzard. I'm sure CMT, the country music television.
It was on there.
Yeah, sure. And it might still be on there.
Some either got pulled or they digitally erased the Confederate flag from the car.
But the car is called the Robert E. Lee. So they would have to get the General Lee, right, which is Robert E. Lee. So then they would have to just dub over the words to be like, change the name to what?
The challenge of being a black man in 2020 that grew up in the 80s. I love the Dukes of Hazzard, man. I watched it every week. It was a good show. Yeah. It was a great show. I mean, and it wasn't until later that I fully understood what the Confederate flag was, and what it meant to the Confederate Army and what it was supposed to represent. But I still love Boss Hogg. I still love Roscoe. And
we were supposed to hate Boss Hogg.
I mean, but you gotta love. You love his buffoonery.
Yeah.
Oh, Roscoe, get them dudes.
Good faith versus bad faith. Context matters. If you're intentionally trying to not inflame, and it just so happens you're buying into it because of part of the context of where the show took place. And
Georgia, right? I think it was somewhere in Georgia. It would make sense that they would have that car.
This whole idea of, are you intentionally doing this because you're trying to offend people versus no, it's just part of the character. There's clearly no ill intent, and judging a show from the 80s by the context of 2020 is never going to win.
It's not
in every regard.
Also, if you bought the General Lee right now and drove it around the way that some people do with the Batmobile, yeah, you have a reason to be judged for that. But if you have the box set, Terry, of the entire Dukes of Hazzard series, which I bet you could get pretty dirt cheap at this point, I wouldn't judge you for that.
I mean, it's sad to say.
But name a single show from the 80s earlier that survives the 2020 woke culture. Very few. MASH, really? Is that not glorifying war? Even though
war and misogyny.
Seasons of the horrors of war.
War and misogyny.
Misogyny. So the one I was thinking of, I Love Lucy. Lucille Ball is a comedic genius in which she's in a lot of ways the key of feminism for that era of why we have female leads that we have today. You go back and look at that show, it's incredibly misogynistic and sexist, and it promotes wife beating. I mean, there's all of these
honeymooners to the moon, Alice. I think the first line is and they were both like equally, and he never hit her. And Ricky Ricardo never hit Lucy.
That's not true. Ricky Ricardo did.
Not in front of the camera. Yeah.
And once she threw a book at her and it hit her in the face, and no one believed her because Ricky, of course, you're going to hit a woman in the face when she steps out.
I can't take I Love Lucy. It's the same way I can't take like the Three Stooges, because it's just like, it's just, if the Stooges show up to like mow a lawn, the house is going to end up on fire. Like everything's going to go wrong. And same with Lucy. It's like, oh, Ricky, today I'm going to start a paper route. And then by the end, somehow she's
lesson that women don't belong in the workforce.
Not delivering papers, no way.
Literally how some of those episodes end.
A child's job back then, I realized. It's now an adult's job, which was weird. But it just like Lucy and her dim-witted friend were just going to screw everything up. Ethel. And that was just never fun. The Honeymooners was a little bit different in that Alice actually got some good zingers back, but like literally the first line of the series is Ralph Cramden mad at the world because he's a lowly bus driver who can't can't give his wife the life that she wants, is threatening to punch her so hard she goes to the moon, which would be a really hard punch. And that was like the catchphrase.
Yeah, going on there, man.
But a lot of stuff is. I remember people getting upset because Gone with the Wind got taken off of HBO Max, which nobody has anyway, and some stupid former talk show host named Casey Bartholomew was like talking about it. And I was like, Gone with the Wind is still widely available if you would like to watch it. The thing is, nobody really wants to watch it anymore. They just want to complain that it got taken off of one platform. I don't think that a lot of the stuff is from past eras. Like, we're not going to go back and review Cheers and review Family Ties, and even Seinfeld probably has some things that would raise some hackles, but it's not going to be taken off the air. I think that a lot of that stuff is kind of overstated.
Saying that?
Because Seinfeld's still on 19 times a day.
Yeah, but again, all you need is one person who then starts the movement.
I disagree.
There's no reason for some of the stuff to even be getting discussed at all, because no one was talking about half the stuff that no one was talking about Gone with the Wind. No one was saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe Gone with the Wind is still on," until someone said, "I can't believe Gone with the Wind."
It got taken off HBO Max. One thing that, again, nobody has. Seinfeld still pays Larry David like $250 million a year, which means that they're generating even more money from that. They're not just going to be like, well, it would have already happened, because if you remember, Kramer kind of had an incident, as Michael Richards, of course, but
yes, it wasn't Kramer. Don't sully the name of
it. It's Kramer. I mean, and Kramer would have not probably had that moment. It would have been much wackier. This one was just kind of mean. Yeah. But and all it did was make Seinfeld's next season sell even better. Like, I think that the stuff that hasn't been removed now, compared to the stuff that has been taken away, the supposed cancel culture, was pretty marginal to begin with, or didn't really carry too much interest. Like you mentioned, Dukes of Hazzard, Terry. No one's setting their DVR to Dukes of Hazzard anymore. It was easy just to get rid of it. Gone with the Wind. Nobody. How many daily views has Gone with the Wind having? But if you took away Seinfeld, there's a lot of people who'd be like, I don't know what to watch before Fallon. Then like there's that or before dinner. It's still clearly hugely popular, and I don't think that people would really stand for it. I know, and Terry, it's something. It's going to be the topic of our next show. We're going to bring on Katie Herzog from The Stranger. And what's that? Yeah, she's the host of a show hilariously called Blocked and Reported. She used to describe herself as a second hated most writer at The Stranger, behind Dan Savage. Now it's the second most hated writer or hated co-host of her podcast. And she talks about
Dan Savage, by the way. I never quite understood that. They hate her way more than Dan.
I agree. Yes. So she was the most hated writer there forever. And one thing we're going to talk about is definitely how she was not allowed to come on KUOW, no matter what the story was. But she talks about cancel culture all the time. Amanda Knox, clearly, this is something that she talks about quite frequently as well. Cancel means a little bit something different to her. But I think that it's no one is talking about it really purely. The people that deny that it exists also just deny that it exists in the way that people who say that it exists talk about it. So it's like, clearly that we do have an issue where there is this fervor, especially on Twitter, we see someone even in a short clip where they're not wearing a mask, or we see Kevin Hart's tweets from 7 years ago, and there's just this thirst to take everything from them, and that's silly. But are they really canceled? Because I've seen a lot of people talking about being canceled, and it's
cancel culture is not the result; it's the process, right? So
that's kind of where I come from. Is that
that's the part? I mean, that's the part I find the most problematic. It is true that in the cancel culture, there have been attempts to cancel content or people, and sometimes, usually, it doesn't quite work. Sometimes it has some instances that'll work, but I mean, ultimately, it doesn't work. Yeah, but I mean, so you keep going down that pathway, and at some point you're going to have a win, and that win then emboldens the next group to be even more crazy in how they go about it. And there's this weird mixing of cancel culture and the marketplace, because there's some people who call, even though I think boycotts are stupid,
well, they never end up hurting the people you think they're going to hurt.
They almost, and most of the reason it doesn't hurt anyone is because the people who say that they're engaged in the boycott, they were never consumers to begin with. I will never buy
NASCAR for a long time. Long time.
I still boycott.
It was so easy.
Oh my God. They'll send out a tweet and they'll hashtag I'm never going to buy Huggies diapers again.
Yeah. You don't have any kids. Never had any. Not going to have any. Yeah. I mean, I think what my interpretation of the cancel culture is, I think it all depends on how egregious the behavior is that call for the canceling in the first place, and the star power. Like, there's some stars that, you could try to cancel them, or you could try to cancel some people, you could try to cancel some companies, like you just said, but it's not going to happen. Like, there's no boycott that's going to take place that's going to put Amazon out of business. You can't get mad at Amazon tomorrow and say,
and we would be all the biggest liars if we said we were.
You'd be lying on top.
Even Shama Sawant, whose namesake I share on Twitter, even she acknowledges that she is an Amazon Prime member. This is the woman who created an entire brand about villainizing Amazon is a Prime member.
But that's
$2.99 overnight shipping.
But that's all like this moral hit we've all taken, because I don't feel good about it. Like I see the person.
Why?
Because they don't treat they treat some people very well, but they treat this massive part of their workforce horribly. And now that I've been kind of part of that world, it's awful. But do I still have an account balance on my Amazon? Yeah, I do, because I'm still ordering from them, because their service overrides the moral hit that you take from ordering from it. Like if you
moral hit is so do you have a moral problem if you're willing to push it aside? Because I would argue that you say
I would do that all the time.
No, because you would clearly you would not choose to go with the service after you purchase something and they say for every DVD you buy, I'm going to murder a kid. You're not going to go with them because you would find that morally reprehensible.
But that's reprehensible. I said a hit, not a punch in the throat. Like that would obviously be.
How many times till you hit 0 and you're willing to just move on? What's the bar?
I'll let you know.
But then I'm arguing, then it's not really as big of a moral hit as you say. I think
not, because it's a death by 1,000 cuts. Like it's never that one that
die
that makes you
still alive.
And as Americans, we've just kind of gotten used to the fact that if we want something good and we want it fast, someone's going to suffer, or an animal's going to suffer, or something. So
I like my Nikes. You know what I'm saying? But somebody in China, communist China, is in a sweatshop sewing my shoes together.
Suffering leads to a better product.
I stopped buying Nike.
For that reason, or for a different reason?
For that reason.
Because of their overseas manufacturing.
Yeah,
it's tough to find.
It's easier to say no to a company like Nike because there's
just one
competition,
right? And Amazon.
But I looked at some of that stuff and I said, this is pretty crappy. I'm out. And it was also easier because I don't particularly worship Nike shoes the way some people do. They're fine, and I don't really wear those style of shoes. So a lot of things came up, but I said
that goes around what we were just talking about a second ago about how much is it a moral issue for you, or is it the fact that I don't really desire that product that much?
It made it easier. It made it easier, but I distinctly remember having the sort of internal conversation of, do I want to back this company? I said, no, I don't want to. Now, again, would I hold that exact position if they were the only people who made shoes that I like? Maybe not. Probably not. But given the different context in which I could make that, I made that decision.
I got a song for you guys real quick.
Is it Vanessa Carlton again?
Boy, Nike makes some good shoes.
That's from the Boondocks. Nike makes some good shoes.
And Nike just put out an insanely inspirational commercial about the power of sport and how it brings us together and everything. And it is weird that Nike does have a really strong ability to make you feel inspirational about what we can overcome and everything. And then also it's like, well, not everybody can overcome. Some people have to make the shoes and they're not going to be able to.
I'm so over any campaign by any company about the power of uniting people.
I want one company to say everybody for themselves, and I will be the most
cynical, man. Why are both of you
lie? Because it is all a lie. Nike does not care that they're uniting people no more than Facebook does. Or Zoom and Microsoft with the ads. During this code, we're bringing people. No, you just want people to use the product, and that's okay. I don't look at a company and say I need them to share my values. Now, if they happen to share organically my values on God knows what, okay, I guess there's a little bit of extra pep when I give them my money, but ultimately, the politics of a company ultimately don't impact where I'm going to spend my money. Sometimes the backstory does if it's particularly egregious, but anyone saying, well, we're bringing people together, just give me my product. Give me my widget for $10.
Do you not think there's one guy or somewhere, one small group within the company, one think tank that, they're just morally, so full of themselves that they believe that, and they presented that to the board. And they said, "Hey, listen."
I don't think any of the big companies believe that. I think the reason why they're big is because they're not about that. Now you can do some really good work with the profits that you've made as a result of having this business. I think Microsoft and Amazon, they put a lot of money. They don't usually promote it, but they put a lot of money into it.
I think Bill Gates is someone who was a tyrant for a while in the business world, but now has become someone who does want to use his money for good. But he certainly wasn't that way when he was building Microsoft. When he had
Microsoft got as big as it got. iPhone, Apple got as big as it got because of that. Amazon and Bezos got as big as it got, and so did Nike. Now I think Nike is actually a really good example of this, because they decided they're looking at the marketplace and they realize they're competing not just nationally, globally, with a lot of brands and all that stuff. So they said, you know what, we're going to go after this group of this demographic. We're buying into the sports culture. We're buying into the social justice of a younger, progressive demographic. That's what we're in. They don't care if 38-year-old conservative dude buys their shoes.
No, they don't.
They don't care about that. They care about the athletes buying their shoes and promoting the brand. And to do that, you have to have a certain political slant, although not having to do with China, by the way, which shows you how full of it they actually are. But that was a specific business decision having nothing to do with their altruism.
But wouldn't you? I would just love to see one commercial, like Burger King, whatever, and it's just full of people just
pushing people aside,
each other for Whoppers, and it's just like Burger King.
I feel like there was an
everyone
ad,
in it for themselves.
But wasn't there a fast food ad or some meat ad that was mocking the people who eat the Beyond Burger, like the vegan stuff? Wasn't there someone who did that?
There was. It was McDonald's, and it was weird because it was this weird, because they had one like 6 months prior. They were trying something, and it wasn't like Beyond. It was still when they were just trying to replace it with, the way old garbage vegetables are. Yeah. Beyond Burger's okay. It's pretty good. And then 6 months later, they decided, like, let's just go all in and basically,
we're not kale eaters or something like that.
It felt very homophobic. It was like, yeah, we know gays here because gays eat plants. It was very weird. And it was like
counterculture. Some people buy into that.
Literal
very very bassy voice guy, like, you want some meat? Which actually sounds like kind of a gay thing.
I don't think that was McDonald's. I think that was Carl's.
McDonald's.
Was it really?
I'm certain it was McDonald's.
I vaguely remember some of the branding was not very good. I just vaguely remember the line.
Because Carl's Jr.'s, I doubt will ever do. Carl's Jr.'s is all about, like, how much food do you want for $8? All of it, because we'll give you so much.
Carl's Jr. is like the hearty, big.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like, their sandwiches are massive.
They're meaty.
And that was kind of what Paris Hilton had her famous ate it on a Camaro thing or whatever. Yeah.
Is there a Carl's Jr. in Pacific North? Where is there one? Tukwila, probably.
Snohomish.
I don't know.
No, it's like it's in Marysville, but it's Snohomish County. Yeah.
You got it all, Terry.
I'm living Arby's.
Life. You got Arby's. You got the police chief. You got well-armed neighbors.
Got guns.
Yeah, They're stuck on TikTok all day.
Wait, this would be the ultimate. Do you have a Long John Silver's?
In Everett. Snohomish.
It's so weird that these chains that are national only have like one location here.
I know. It's really strange.
Well, let me ask you this, and I've asked this question before. Like, honestly, like, if you live in the Pacific Northwest, why in the hell would you ever go to a Long John Silver's? Like, that's the seafood if you live in, like, Indiana. Like, oh, we're going to Long John's for seafood.
But you're doing it because it's cheap.
There's that too, but still,
I don't know. My favorite thing about Filet-O-Fish is that they don't get any more specific. It's just fish. No follow-up questions.
What kind of fish is it?
Fish from water. That's all that matters.
Yeah, but what kind of fish? It's breaded.
It had a tail at one point.
Yeah.
Fish is good. Whatever.
It actually is really good.
When else do you ever put cheese on fish?
Never.
Yeah, you're not going to put cheese on fish.
Never.
So, but weirdly, I know it's crustacean. It's not fish, but like lobster mac and cheese. I don't understand.
Yeah, that's different.
I don't get it. I don't.
Because it's a cheaper way to get some kind of lobster. Because if you buy a tail, they're expensive. So you just kind of get the essence of lobster, and then maybe there's a couple of chunks. It's my least favorite way to have lobster, I think. Probably. Yep. All right, let's wrap it up.
There you go. That was very anticlimactic right there.
I'm done.
Yeah. Jason, you don't need to promote it. Yeah. Follow Jason at CMK Shama or CM Shama at Twitter. Find all his prescient tweets over there.
You'll
Terry,
my take on capitalism.
You will.
Baby Shapiro.
Not a fan. Not a fan. And what a weird profile picture. Looks nothing like the way he looks now. Terry, I'll talk to you next week again. We have Katie Herzog from The Stranger and Amanda Noxon. We're going to talk pretty specifically about cancel culture.
Sweet.
I've been looking forward to that. What's that?
Was Amanda dealing with that?
She's had some issues with that. She's been more. I mean, she was.
To be fair, and I hope
no, because that's what. Don't lump like Bill Cosby into cancel culture. Like you break people.
That's just a weird pairing to me.
Because Amanda has spoken out about it to a pretty good degree, and I feel like she's a credible voice. Katie is, always talking.
I know why you're talking.
Yeah.
Cancel slightly different.
No, I was reading Amanda's tweets about the letter that Harper's put out that Thomas Chatterton Williams that was kind of against cancel culture and how it takes away debate and nuance and everything like that. And Amanda was all over talking about it, and so.
That letter is nothing compared to the Barry Weiss resignation, which was so well written. Did you read that?
The what? I didn't read either one. I don't care.
The Barry Weiss one is just a brilliant piece of writing.
I just needed the idea behind the letter. I support the actual justification. I mean, I follow Chatterton Williams, so he basically outlines the case for the letter constantly. So I get the gist of it, but. It would violate a piece of my soul to literally read an open letter. Like I can't actually read an open letter. It's ridiculous.
Open letters are the height of arrogance. No one gives a damn about your stupid letter, except I'm glad I read the Barry Weiss one. It was really well done.
Oh, and that was not an open letter. That was a letter to her former boss. That was written specifically for somebody.
That she published. I mean, it's the same.
No,
she didn't call it an open letter.
Yeah. I'd love to have Barry on anytime too.
I'm sure she's jumping at that opportunity.
Well, you will see how successful her new media play is, because I don't know if it's going to work all that well. Because there's people that do it. She's starting her own stuff. Like anybody who gets fired from a major publication or resigns.
She'll play for like 2 months, and then she either makes it or
exactly. I feel like there's other entities that have been dedicated to this for quite a while. So whatever. End of show. Thank you so much, Jason. Terry, talk to you next week. We'll get the mic issue resolved and everything.
I got a mic.
Goodbye, everybody. Have a great week.
See you guys. Thanks, Jason.
Cheers.
Bye.